Hey folks, welcome back to the Pulse. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. It is 1246 Central Texas time. Welcome back. We're talking about the battle for stability today. And what you usually get when you come to Crypto Heartbeat is a different perspective. Most folks are looking at pDAI and the stable coins on PulseChain as this big opportunity to pump their bags. And it may be, but the true battle is for stable coins. And you've probably heard it before, but we're going to be talking about it today. There's an incredible article that really reveals what's happening. And I would say the theme of today is we are trading, or are we trading one master for another? And that's the big question that we're going to be talking about today. One master for another. We think about this alternative financial system that we're building together. What is the purpose and the reason for this whole decentralized financial system? And what is the genius of Richard Hart? What is he actually doing behind the scenes? I'm going to give you some thoughts about pDAI as well. Just some interesting things. We're going to hear from Richard, some video that's been compiled. But a lot of people are looking at this because it is something like, hey, if I can get a big bag of pDAI, and it's this narrative kind of meme coin thing, everybody's talking about it. But I'm going to take this a little bit deeper, and we're going to look at really what's the reasoning behind if, in fact, there was a stable coin like pDAI that was on the Pulse chain. What would that actually mean? What's the purpose of it? What are the implications of it? And so we're going to dive into the existing kind of world of CBDCs, of stable coins, and really how they are essentially the same thing that we're dealing with when it comes to the current extractive financial system, right? There's a promise, and I think when people read the Bitcoin white paper, and when they understand the very nature of decentralized finance with no counterparty risk, no middlemen, they're like, "Oh, this is inspiring," right? But the problem is, if you're not on guard and you don't have a vision for where you're going, you're just going to follow the money. And so many people get intoxicated with the fact that, hey, I'm going to get to retire in one Lambo. But what's happening here is so much more significant, really, for our kids, our grandkids, great grandkids. This is actually a battle that we have the opportunity to win. And I think only really on the Pulse chain do we have the ability to win. And it's because of who Richard Hart is. And I'm going to make a case for why I think it's not about, get yourself a bag of pDAI. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not recommending it. I don't want you to hear this as a shill for pDAI. What I want you to hear is what's the case for an alternative financial system that is truly decentralized, that has a stable coin like pDAI or other of the stables, because they're not all created the same. And for those of you who are not aware, this is really what the battle is for. And I'll make this case before I get into the chat. The number one thing that retailers ultimately want, and I think the vision long-term for crypto, is that it is going to be a means of exchange. It's going to be, quote unquote, an actual currency. Right now, cryptocurrency, the term, is a misnomer, right? It's not a cryptocurrency right now. It's a crypto asset. And so people are storing value in these assets. There are a number of utility coins that are doing different things that have a specific utility. But for the most part, there's not really, widespread across the world use of, crypto as far as means of exchange. Now, it's moving in that direction, certainly. I mean, governments are making purchases, obviously, but it's not this world reserve currency at this point. So this battle is ultimately for what is going to be the means of exchange, and what is it going to represent? Is it going to be denominated in dollars? For example, the dollar-backed stable coin, right? Something that is denominated in US dollars. The future is unknown. Obviously, dollar hegemony and the power of the United States empire would love to keep it on a dollar type of standard. But this is the breaking apart of a system, and there are players within that system that are trying to take control. And we're going to talk about that. It is a really interesting story, and we're going to dive into an article that Whitney, Webb, and others who are a part of, it's called Unlimited Hangout, and they are investigative journalists who've really dive into a very, very kind of dark and sinister plan to remake the financial system by utilizing and leveraging crypto, especially Bitcoin. And so if you're not aware of that, you're going to want to pay attention because it's pretty amazing. 48 people on 3 platforms. Thanks for being here. Rafoon, Rat Food himself is back. Fairweather friends are coming back. And so here I am. Dude, you're always welcome here. I appreciate you being here, man. It's an indication of the times that we're in. It's a very exciting time. If you've been watching for a long time, I mean, this is the time after the election, everything went pop, and here we are. I believe that we've got basically until October or November of next year. That's kind of this process by which we're going to get likely another altcoin summer. But right now, Bitcoin's the story, and obviously Ethereum's next, and obviously all the altcoins come after that. But this is a really exciting time, mostly because we've seen such a shift in the regulatory environment. We're going to see, obviously, Gensler's out on the 20th. So there's some big things happening, and I think it's very, very bullish for crypto for a lot of reasons, and I'm not the only one that's paying attention. But Rat Food, good to see you. KDM, Halo, what's up, man? Good to see you, buddy. Magnus is here. Fallen Comrade, welcome back. Taryn, thanks for being here. DCR. Finbear, what's up, man? Good to see you. And Ruskino, hello from Oxford. It's good to see you. If you do have the opportunity to share this out, I'd encourage you to do that. We've had in the past some amazing streams. When the oral arguments happened, there was like, I did 2 streams that day, 1,600 people on the first one, I think 1,660, and the other one was over 2,100, which is just unbelievable. But it shows you how many people are out there paying attention and are interested in what's happening in the Richard Heart ecosystem. I was on with a potential partner the other day, development partner, who's a very large Web3 development firm. And we hadn't really talked about, our interest in the PulseChain. And they admitted that there were some engineers in their organization that are heavily invested in the PulseChain. It made me feel a lot better working with that partner. But folks, it's almost like in the past, people wouldn't advertise that they're voting for Trump, right? I think the same thing is true about Richard Heart. Not a lot of people are willing to admit that they are a part of the Pulse and PulseX sacrifice, that they're paying attention to the case with Richard Heart. So it is good to have you here. All right, let's check this out. So this is linked in the description. This is an article. Mark Goodwin is the one who is the author of this. This is breaking down the chain, an investigation postmortem. So there's been a number of things. And so I'm going to walk you through this. I'm just promoting this to you. We're not going to read it, but I want you to, if you're really interested in the detail of this, this is the investigative reporting related to how some really significant players are really trying to take over the financial system. And, if you think about Jekyll Island, if you're familiar with that, in 1910, a group of bankers and rich guys got together in Georgia at Jekyll Island. And essentially that was the creation of what we now know as the Federal Reserve System, which is a private corporation, right? So in secret, rich people collude together to build an empire or a system that rewards them. That's happening again. Okay, so we're trading essentially one master for another. This isn't happening in one meeting in one island with the First Name Club, as they were called. This is actually an issue that's happening out in front of us. And so what Whitney, Webb, Mark Goodwin, and others have broken down is this really tangled web of folks that are, from a corporate perspective, trying to take over not just the US dollar, but the new financial system. Okay, so there's a real battle here. And I'm going to juxtapose that against what Richard Heart is doing. Okay, so what Richard Heart is doing, in my opinion, is a very pure play. But if you don't understand this, you think, well, it's just tokens going up and maybe I'll get rich. I think it's important for you to understand really what the real battle is behind the scenes and why it's so significant that we have the PulseChain and what it actually represents. Because most people, they miss that or they don't dig deep enough into it. So rather than us talking about, hey, what coin should I buy, understand the times that we live in and what the real battle is for. Okay, so as I scroll down this, I just want to point out a couple. This is a series called The Chain. So the chain of custody, the mafia holding the elite's Bitcoin. Okay, so that was the first. The second, the chain of issuance, the people and patents that built the financial surveillance network. So this brings in a whole other issue as it relates to data and surveillance. The chain of consensus, the cartel behind the blockchain. The chain of command, how Facebook's Libra, bank regulators, and PayPal built a new world currency. And then, of course, we have the final postmortem. Trump embraces the Bitcoin dollar stablecoins to entrench U.S. financial hegemony. Okay, so there's so much that is in this series that you ought to take a look. What I did was I broke this down for you utilizing AI. And so what I want to do is I want to share with you this. So this is basically, I'm going to take all of that and kind of give you the highlights so that you understand what's really going on. And so this is a lot, this is kind of condensed. And so, I mean, why do you tune into something like this? So you get some information so you don't have to read 88,000 words. So let's go here to this document right here. Okay, so let's take a look. Key insights. So the key insights in this are the interconnected financial entities. So the investigation uncovers a complex network of individuals, corporations, investors, and technological frameworks that have collaboratively developed the system. Notably, figures like Brock Pierce, with ties to both cryptocurrency ventures and controversial associations, exemplify the intricate relationships influencing this financial evolution. Historical context, the article draws parallels between current developments and historical collaborations between organized crime and intelligence agencies, such as Operation Underworld during World War II. This comparison highlights the long-standing interplay between illicit networks and state mechanisms in shaping financial systems. Technological surveillance, the role of technology companies, particularly those linked to Peter Thiel, is emphasized in advancing financial surveillance. Entities like Planeter, originating from PayPal's anti-fraud algorithms, have evolved into sophisticated surveillance tools, blurring the lines between private enterprise and state intelligence. Stablecoins and financial control, the proliferation of stablecoins, especially those issued by private corporations, is scrutinized for their potential in centralized financial control and enhanced surveillance capabilities. The article warns that these developments could lead to a financial system where privacy is compromised and economic power is concentrated among a few dominant players. Imagine that. Future implications. The piece concludes by urging caution regarding the integration of Bitcoin and stablecoins into the mainstream financial system. It advocates for a critical examination of how these technologies might be co-opted to extend government and corporate control rather than serving the tools of financial liberation. And that's the main point of all this, right? So I'm going to break this down and make it make sense. So if in Jekyll Island in 1910, rich people got together to collude about creating a system that rewards them, well, that was obviously about power as it relates to money. Well, this is a corporate control. So obviously corporate entities utilizing technology and then the financial system are colluding together with these big companies and building essentially a framework of surveillance, but also a system that rewards them. So what I asked at the beginning was, are we trading one master for another? I don't think it's a surprise to too many people when they think about central bank digital currencies, this idea that the government's going to have, this ability to, create digital money. Well, they print money already, right? Fiat currency is printed. It's a database record. And at the end of the day, we see this debasing the currency through, monetary policy, easing or, gifts to people for student loans, paying off things, so we printed all this money. The problem in the history of world reserve currencies is that people never pay back their sovereign debt. And that's really the fall of empires, is really around the financial system. And so we're headed towards that, right? So this time period right now where things are, blowing and going, and we're probably going to see a lot of, good things come. We're going to see asset prices go through the roof. And there are many people who are calling this the great melt up, meaning that those that don't have assets are going to be left behind, and those that do have assets are going to see those asset values go high. Why? Because we're, continuing to print, right? So there's so much more liquidity, there's so much more printed money. And so your house that's worth $500,000 is going to be worth $1.5 million. Well, I guess that's good, but what does it look like in dollar terms? Okay, so what I think is important to note as it relates to this system that people are using is, I think the most dystopian kind of storyline is that there's going to be some other crisis in the future, and that crisis may be a health crisis like we've had in the past, and that health health crisis is going to cause the government to say, hey, whether it's a shutdown, whatever it may be, is that there needs to be new stimulus money. This last time around, they said, hey, we'll just put it into your bank account because we have that information because of your tax return, right? So that was convenient, right? And in the name of convenience, they're going to say, okay, if you want to get this money because we basically smoked you out by locking you down or limiting your ability to move or speak or whatever it may be, that the government is going to give you something. And in order to get you to adopt this digital currency, this new dollar, this central bank digital currency, you're going to have a government wallet. Well, we see obviously, places that have adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, like El Salvador, there's government wallets. Well, what is a government wallet? Obviously, with something that, a transparent ledger is essentially the ability to track and trace. Obviously, that's a concern, right? Because what comes with the digital wallet is now the transactions are tracked. And, digital IDs and social credit scores kind of come right after those. And so we've got this system here that, Whitney Webb and her collaborators have basically pointed out that this is essentially opportunistic people like Peter Thiel and others who are saying, hey, let's get in on this thing and let's control it, right? And there's the web, if you will, of detail within this series, the chain. If you dig into it, it is mind numbing how, projects that started and failed have come back to life, but ultimately those that are controlling, when you hear people like Michael Saylor and MicroStrategies and all this stuff, we think these are just good guys, oh, he's just buying Bitcoin. No, this is a battle for the control of this new digital financial system. And so we know that there are laws and, Trump's even said, hey, there's not going to be a central bank digital currency. Well, it will be in effect. And this is what I would call compromise, right? There's this illusion that you have this, independent money, right? And, Edward Snowden spoke at the Bitcoin 2024 conference, and he warned everyone. He said, you guys are all cypherpunks. You're so excited about this sovereignty and removing middlemen and not having counterparty risk, and you're going to be able to do this peer-to-peer digital cash transactions and all this. But in reality, that has been taken over. And the case for this is obvious. If you look at the stable coins, that's really what the battle's for. So what do we have for the most part? We've got USDT, we've got USDC. There are some others, of course. But at the end of the day, these things are centralized. And, who's partnering up with the government, right? CEO of Coinbase, obviously Circle, and USDC is related to them. This is really a goal of saying, you think that crypto is independent and it's transparent and it's, no counterparty risk, when in reality, they're colluding essentially with these players to essentially create a scenario in which they have, complete access and control to monitor. And the warning that Edward Snowden gave at that conference was, you have this illusion that you have independence. But the problem is all of this information, it being transparent, means that people can essentially take in all of this data and information and watch these transactions as they happen across all of crypto. And so, you think that they can't track wallets and don't know where you are. I'm using VPNs or whatever it may be. But in reality, that's an illusion. Their ability to know where things, come from. But the future is ultimately to get you to dox yourself. And the spirit of crypto is it is, truly decoupled from this war machine centralized thing. And so the more and more that we see of this, the more and more we understand what Richard Hart's goal is with the PulseChain. Everyone takes it from a different perspective. From my perspective, what Richard's trying to do is actually, save the world. And I know that sounds really kind of pie in the sky and Pollyanna-ish, but in the end of the day, someone has to do it. There has to be a truly decentralized system. There has to be an alternative financial system, because what happens when all of this surveillance, all of this, 99% of the transactions look like this, but these ones stick out? Well, an analyst at some 3-letter agency can say, we're just going to turn you off. or you didn't buy the right things. And obviously that's very dystopian. And, how far into the future is this limitation of buying and selling, if you will? But the fact of the matter is they're working behind the scenes to do it. And Whitney Webb and her group have done an amazing work to say, hey, you need to be cautious and careful about this. You think that, just the US government embracing Bitcoin is like this big win for you because, hey, you're going to be rich and you won't care. But I'm thinking past this cycle and I'm seeing what everyone else is seeing. But this is as it relates to stable coins and the Pulse chain, and really probably the reason you came here. So I'm gonna play some video of Richard Hart, which is always a fan favorite. And also I want to give a shout out to Nine Irons Capital, pDAI Maxi, for all of the work that group of folks have done. I am not an expert when it comes to pDAI, but I want to share with you. Some information. This was one of my favorite interviews with Richard and Hexologist here.
USDC has admin keys. They can invalidate anyone's coins whenever they want. Do they invalidate those coins on PulseChain that they have the admin keys to, right, and risk getting sued by their users for destroying their value?
Stablecoins are an interesting case. I think they'll have some value unless their founders use their admin keys to invalidate them all, and then the users might sue them.
If you have USDC on Ethereum, you're going to have USDC on Pulse. What's it going to be worth? Nobody knows. Are they going to use their admin keys to invalidate all the coins and freeze them all? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what value USDC is going to have yet. Maybe it's $1. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe they use their admin keys and nuke it. Do I think Tether or Coinbase will invalidate their tokens with admin keys? I have no idea, man. I don't know. There's some exceptions here, right? So fake DeFi, things that have admin keys like stable coins, or maybe you could even consider NFTs. Depends on what you consider authoritative to whether you own an NFT or not. Is it that some guy's centralized server says you do, or is it that the blockchain says you do? So, in the case of stable coins, you're not going to be able to redeem them for dollars, maybe unless they're algorithmic. But they're definitely going to have different parameters at launch. And then they've got admin keys that they can validate all the coins that they want. They might not do that because they probably wouldn't want all their users suing them for just jacking all their users' free money that they got. You don't know what the value of USDC is going to be on the Pulse chain. I don't know. They could use their admin keys and set it to 0, but then they might get sued into oblivion by their users. USDC has admin keys. USDT has admin keys. They can just turn off your coins whenever they want. Will USDC on the Pulse network be worth $1? I have no idea. Will the admins that control the admin keys for this fake cryptocurrencies just invalidate them all and risk having their users sue them? Until I have the time to create my own stablecoin, I would like to see the existing stablecoin issuers support PulseChain when it launches. That'd be great, because I think being able to de-risk, particularly during a bear market, is nice. Some stablecoins don't have an admin key. I don't think DAI has an admin key, but USDC and USDT do.
Okay, I don't know if you picked that up, right? He talks so much about USDC, and then at the very end, he talks about the one that doesn't have an admin key. So if you go into, and I'd really encourage you to follow Nine Iron Capital on Twitter, and this is pDAI Maxi. You're going to get a wealth of information. There's some incredible videos that have been done about the pegging and all of this. But I want to really point out not the fact that this could be an investment that could go up 100x, from a penny to $1. That's not the point of this, because that's all speculation at this point. But I think it's really important to understand this. Richard Hart, and this is my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. Richard Hart consistently, since the very beginning, has always been about watching out for his users in his community. I got a chance to interview him 2 times. And one of the questions I asked him, I said, when you're 99, what do you want to look back at as the legacy of Richard Hart? And he said, it's the community. Okay, so I've said this a million times. Richard Hart cares about you and me. Now, individually, maybe not, but he does care in general about those who are actually paying attention to him. Okay, so what Richard Hart has done, consistently, if you're new to this, you don't realize this, but prior to all the twerking, he was always warning of issues and hacks and anything that could potentially compromise the people in his community. And so, since the SEC filings and all of this stuff, he's been pretty quiet. But at the end of the day, he's consistently been watching out for people. Richard's paying attention to what's happening in his ecosystem. He's seeing all these people get excited about pDAI. He knows what's happening, with all this analysis. The big thing to me is that you have all this talk about stable coins, and then you hear all these things from Richard Hart. Hey, it's an experiment. I don't know. No one's ever copied over the system state of Ethereum and given everybody free coins. But the most important thing I think to note is the fact that the P maker contract, and this is important for you to know, Circle, which is USDC and USDT, these are centralized admin key stable coins that are backed by the US dollar or dollar equivalents. In reality, about 75% is dollar equivalents. They're not actual dollars. So, but DAI is different. So the maker DAO contract is how you mint your own stable coin called DAI. In the early days, it was just Ethereum that you'd put in 150% collateralization, and it would mint you DAI. Well, that contract got copied over in the system state with the PulseChain. But what happened at that very early stage, and there's a lot of speculation about this, I'm just going to give you the high level, that contract was altered, right? And it was paused. And so there were edits made. And so there was pre-knowledge of the pDAI contract. Well, why is DAI important? Because Richard doesn't have the admin keys to USDC or USDT, right? So all of these other, stable coins, that's why he warned of the risk. They could invalidate them. But because the pDAI that literally was essentially forked over the existing DAI people had in their wallets on the Ethereum blockchain that were copied over, this was an opportunity to essentially edit the code, to be able to take over, because of the amount of DAI that Richard had, to be able to take over that maker contract. Well, things have developed, and if you want to dive in deep, you can. But the point I'm trying to make is that why is it important that in an alternative financial system that's truly decentralized, that is this promise of sovereignty and freedom and the ability to transact, why does it need a stablecoin? Well, because that's actually the future of transactions, is having something that is universally a dollar. And I think the greatest case for that is, think about you if you're a business owner at the point of sale. At the point of sale, you want to have something that's stable. You don't want to be in something that fluctuates, right? Because you've got costs. And of course, you don't, the dollar is the dollar. Now, obviously, you could make a case that it gets debased, but at the end of the day, for transactions, for it to really truly be a means of exchange, for it to really truly be, a means to transact, you're going to need a stable coin. Well, this is the closest thing to, and is, a non-admin key stablecoin. Having that properly collateralized on the PulseChain, if this actually were to happen, and I mean, there were talk in the past that it would be collateralized by Hex or whatever it may be, the proposals that are out there to essentially peg this to a dollar, I think is bigger than most people understand. Because what it does is, Richard has talked about a vertically aligned ecosystem. And what is that vision? A vertically aligned ecosystem is one in which you can do everything within this world, if you will. Well, what is the PulseChain but Ethereum? It benefits from all of the upgrades that are going to happen with Ethereum. It's properly decentralized across all the validators and all the different nodes, right? So we have that piece of it. So it's not in the hands of people that are tied to governments. It's not in the hands of people that are tied to AWS. It is in the hands of independent individual people across the world. So truly decentralized. Obviously, there are a lot of different, tokens that have been launched on the PulseChain. This is not an endorsement of those things. But if you look at what Richard has done, right, he's actually, created Pulse, which is essentially Ethereum, right? It is the gas token. The utility of that is you do business on the PulseChain with Pulse. PulseX, which is the DEX, the decentralized exchange, and this is the token of it. And it has a component where Everything that is done on the chain buys and burns that token. So you've got a deflationary PulseX. That's interesting. But now you've got pDAI, which is really interesting because pDAI is tied to the maker contract. So this P maker contract that has been altered and now is accepting proposals, if in fact that gets collateralized, and I don't know what tokens end up being the collateral tokens, the ability for the PulseChain to have its own separate, truly decentralized and collateralized stablecoin means that we can do essentially transactions, and it can be this alternative financial system. And in the vision for this alternative financial system is possible. It's another piece in the puzzle for a vertically aligned ecosystem. Because the future of crypto, ultimately, long term, is that you won't need to go to fiat because there will be these, you'll be able to exchange cross chain. And so this is the big coup here, is that I think the great experiment that Richard launched was, hey, if I copy these things over, will they have any value? Well, look at WBTC. I mean, it's amazing to me that these things have value. Well, what is value? Value is just an agreement, right? So Austrian economics is literally the basis of that, is that the value is determined by parties. Whether you think that this painting is worth $2 million or $2 is determined by the parties that are buying it. And at the end of the day, that's what we're seeing here. This price discovery is based on people's belief. But to me, what I think makes this story more compelling is not debating things like Richard's personality or tokens or even tokenomics. It's more of this overarching freedom and sovereignty. What is left standing when this corporate, military, surveillance, industrial complex controls the money once again? And that's really what we're trading. We don't see what's actually happening behind the scenes, but we're trading one master for another. And of course, this is what happens. Where there's opportunity, people are going to seize that opportunity. So rather than the Fed controlling things, it's people like Michael Saylor, right? And so they want power. And so we were essentially sacrificing Bitcoin on the altar of decentralization and saying, no, well, that's gone. And that's really, I got to give a hat tip to Axie's Alive for that, is that's how it feels. It's like, well, the origin of this and the purpose of, decentralized money, it's exciting, right? This is the first time in human history where financial power and political power have been separated. And we now have this ability to kind of chart our own course with money. But the problem is that everyone that's out there, I think, outside of Richard Hart and maybe, the Cardano founder, Charles, is this, commitment to a truly separate, decentralized financial system. The problem is most people that are in this world will trade all kinds of things for convenience. We that are in this true DeFi movement, we're fine with holding our own keys. And we're also take responsibility when we get hacked or we do something stupid and we lose all of our coins. Well, the majority of people that are out there in everyday life that don't understand crypto want someone to hold their hand. And this is the issue. I mean, we could go into things, like the Patriot Act and all of the stuff that's happened by governments to try to basically trade you this convenience for your security. And the same thing is happening once again. But I think we have to understand that the battle for stablecoins, the battle for is much more, it's bigger than that. It's really the battle for your sovereignty of transaction, the ability for you to be able to do transactions privately, for you to be able to do transactions without surveillance, for you to be able to do, and that's an issue that we're going to have to deal with. So we're far from mature when it comes to the PulseChain. But if you back up and you look at what's out there, this is, in my opinion, the only place where we actually have a chance to remain essentially autonomous. And pDAI is a key to that. It's another piece in the puzzle. The amazing thing is the timing that we're in. This is the beginning of this bull run. I mean, right now, and this is my opinion, we see this Bitcoin run. We hit the ceiling at 100,000. It, takes a big jump back, and we're going to pop through that. Richard's, his forecast for Bitcoin is $241,500. Well, where does that put Ethereum? Well, Ethereum's going to go next. The next big thing I'm looking for is Ethereum breaking its all-time high. Well, what happens after that, right? As these things stall, they get rotated into the altcoins. And we're going to see a run on that. But if you go back in time, right, and you look back at the massive parabolic run of Hex, just go look at the chart and look at the dates when it literally went absolutely bananas. It was about 5 months. And I don't know that people actually like think about it or look back at that. I mean, take a look. Once things broke the all-time high, they obviously kind of moved in the right direction, up into the right. But then this parabolic move that we called altcoin summer was about a 5-month period until the top. So if we're sitting at about 12 months or 11 months from the next top, back out 5 months, and that's when you're going to see things go parabolic. What are we going to accomplish this go around? I don't know. But when I think about what Richard's thinking about, he's thinking way ahead. He's way ahead of everyone else. And I like the fact that he's got this conviction. But the point, I think, on the pDAI side is Richard he's been warning people not to get wrecked. And I have not heard him make a comment about do not speculate on pDAI. If Richard thought that everyone was going to get hurt by it, he might say something, right? Now, there's this movement, and what I'm hoping is there's enough noise in the marketplace that if this is not Richard's plan, if this is not the goal with adjusting the PMaker contract and actually, showing his hand, if you will, and people reading between the lines and people like 9irons Capital, breaking things down and helping understand what's, potentially going on here. I think the facts are probably pretty clear. But if Richard's not in it, potentially kind of leading his followers to slaughter, right? If this is not the intent, and that's my biggest concern. I think all the data is showing that, hey, Richard's behind this, and this was the intent all along, because it is not you're minting your own stable coin through the maker contract. I mean, that's the beauty of DAI. And so if you can get it to peg, that becomes the stable coin and I think it's incredible. It is very, very important for this future financial system to have, a dollar, denominated stablecoin. But I don't hear Richard warning his folks that, hey, you're going to get wrecked in pDAI. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to come out here in the future and say, hey, what in the world are you guys doing? You guys are delusional. So Richard, if you're watching, we'd encourage that, telegraphing that information. And I think that if he wasn't under kind of this SEC stuff, we probably would hear some very direct information. I mean, imagine Richard came on a live stream and said, yes, I did that. And yes, that's the plan. And here's how we're going to go about doing it. I mean, the waves that would make. And so I think there's a time coming when that will be there. And right now people are speculating. And that's what I think it is. It's speculating in all these different ways. Do I think it's going to go up? Do I think it's going to peg? Well, we'll see. It's at what, 1.6 or something like that right now. So anyway, let's get back into the chat. That's my opinion. You need to understand what the battle is for. But to me, it's way more important that we have this alternative financial system, 5, 10, 15, 50 years down the road, where you can actually do transactions without having all of this surveillance. You don't have to have a government wallet. You can trade and transact with people without, fear of retribution. And that's important, right? That freedom and sovereignty. But to see it being taken over in a mafia sort of way by the corporate elite is cause for concern. But I don't expect them to operate any other way. That's just the way they operate. But we actually have this unique opportunity in this time. And frankly, the leadership of Richard Hart and what I see is real hope for the future. And I think that smart people, the more they realize that they're kind of trading one master for another, are going to see, hold on, these are the real, this is the real DeFi. There's actually somebody out in the marketplace that is actually defending the purpose behind why Bitcoin was created in the beginning. That's a big deal. That is a really big vision. And I think it's important to note. That's all I have to say about that. All right, who else is here? Ruskino, good to see you. Zion Femi, Nigeria, good to see you. Academaciated, hello. Heartbeat and fam. Mike Austell, what's up? Super late, hello to you. CBD or Crypto Heartbeat, will you talk about the stables USDL, PXDC, and HexDC? All of them are PulseChain native, backed by Richard Hart coins, no admin keys, over collateralized. Perfect example, right? Obviously USDL, and I don't know about the others, but I'll just kind of speak to USDL. USDL is using the Liquidity protocol. USDL, and I believe is, it's collateralized by PulseChain tokens, right? In this case, Pulse. And so when you have is it USDL or LUSD? I think it's USDL. Liquid loans, right? So those exist. They are pegged to $1. They're, ultimately collateralized by tokens within the PulseChain. And so they do exist. I think that the big win here is not just that those would become the standard, but that there would be something. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of different, stable coin equivalents that you can collateralize with, things like the Liquidity protocol. We see that for PulseX and we see it for Pulse. But I think more importantly, DAI is it's got market understanding, if you will. Okay. And so at the end of the day, having something that can be utilized for transactions that is stable is important. But I'm not saying that there's not going to be some out of the blue other stablecoin that's not going to kind of win the day, but DAI obviously, and the support of Richard Hart. That's the thing, and this is kind of a personal opinion. There's a lot of people building a lot of things on the Pulse chain that they think are going to be super successful. And it seems like it when Richard's so quiet. But when Richard comes back, all attention is going to be on him. And so a lot of these things that people are building behind the scenes, and I think that there are some good things that, they're bonding liquidity in many different ways to the things within the ecosystem. And they're going to benefit from when Richard does come back, when we do see this thing really pumping. And then, of course, that last 5 months of the cycle where it just goes bananas, they're going to benefit. But I do think that, a lot of what's been happening in the bear market and continues to happen here is a lot of rearranging, existing value deck chairs, and where the money's going to actually come into is going to be, it's going to be driven by a different catalyst than just where are things pumping. I think as this awareness of the surveillance state, as this awareness of, control, and it's going to make the Pulse chain, and I don't know if it's this cycle, it's going to make the Pulse chain really stand out because of the fact that you don't have these same things. I think the next big thing for the Pulse chain is going to be privacy. Is how do you do transactions privately? And to have something that's truly decentralized and doesn't have admin keys, I mean, there's no limitation. That's the beauty of having our own ecosystem, is that if it's properly decentralized, you can launch whatever you want on it. But Richard Hart is the leader of this thing, right? And you have to be careful about, worshiping a man. But when somebody has a vision and is advocating and taking their time and intellect and putting it into trying to build a system that is not going to be compromised by centralized players and is committed to the true tenets of DeFi, I look at that and I go, that's a really important thing. Because in a way, if all of it gets compromised, we've lost this opportunity. And that's really the hope. Everybody was so hopeful about Bitcoin, of having this digital money that, someone at the Federal Reserve can't change a database record and, 5 trillion more are printed. Like, no, it's a controlled supply. Like, it will never change. That was the hope. But that's all been, over time, people will trade their authority for power, money. And Richard is not willing to do that. And if he consistently stays with the message that I've heard, it's hopeful for us. We have a shot. And so, do I understand how it all works together? No, but I do know that I'm going to stick with people who are advocating for you to have freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom to associate, freedom to transact, freedom to, to do whatever you want, to stay for, centralized players and government control to stay out of your business. And I think that wins the day. I really do. I think freedom and sovereignty and individual choice wins the day. Is it completely set up? No, but that's why there's opportunity. Because if everything was super stable, there wouldn't be any mad gains for your big bags. Red Squirrel, oi oi, what's up? Finn Bear, Alex Santos, new to the channel, thanks to the Hex PulseChain community. Got hooked on what you were speaking about. Had to subscribe. Thanks, man. I appreciate that a lot. Alex Santos, welcome. Appreciate that. Neo out. Sup, fellas? Sam Kemp, late arrival, but I'm here. Hey, man, thank you so much. Tin Top says Whitney Webb is one of the best research journalists of our time. Correction, all time. I couldn't agree with you more. It's, when you see this type of thing happening, and what I appreciate about her is everybody's excited about the Trump win. I certainly was as well. But, the warning, right? That, and we see this with the picks that he's making is that, you think, hey, it's just going to be this wholesale change. And I do think there's going to be some amazing changes, but the compromise comes, it creeps in, right? And we're seeing it more and more. And for Whitney Webb and folks like her and this whole independent journalism world, which I think is a real gift, with places like X and others, is that mainstream media is dying, and we're going to be able to have these access to people who do this super diligence. I mean, this whole series of The Chain was 88,000 words. I mean, it's just an amazing. I mean, she wrote 2 books that are like 2,000 pages apiece, the amount of research, but this tangled web, literally, that's been created through, some really, really bad actors is, this goal to remake this system in their corporate surveillance control. And that's what we're trying to get away from. And to think that, what I think a lot of times people would say is a band of pirates in the PulseChain, right? A rollicking band of pirates. And, I think a lot of people would say it's at times really schlocky and a lot of degens and those type of things. There are some really smart people, but I think more than anything is recognizing this autonomy and independent spirit that Richard has and his knowledge and, commitment to advocating for people. You can't fake that. And that is apparent to me. And if you think about that care and concern, considering others in addition to yourself is like this fundamental thing that, most people are just willing to stomp on your neck, right? They're just willing to. And that's the difference. And the one thing, if I want to promote anything and preserve anything, is that I believe that the best of us comes out in this community when we get together in person. And I don't want to see that. That to me is the differentiator for the PulseChain Hex PulseChain community, is a group of people who are literally, they've seen difficult times. A lot of people, blue collar folks, can relate to Richard Hart. But they recognize that something special is happening here, and the wind has changed in our favor. But we should never compromise, right? Never compromise with hedge fund folks, outside investors. And the challenge is you have to trust Richard and this idea of the OA. But when, you think about it, it's a lot. You have to have leadership, right? It would be great if it just existed outside of leadership, but regardless of who controls what, it still needs leadership in order to accomplish its ultimate goal, which is to be a truly decentralized alternative financial system. So, Michael, can't wait for the mythical Peganing LP, all the liquidity folks with the core tokens with pDAI. Yeah, I think it's going to take a while. I mean, if you just back out from the chart and you look at $1, I mean, it's not even a blip where we are right now. I mean, obviously 100x from a penny. We'll see. We'll see. Will it happen this time around? Will some big change happen and it almost happen overnight? I mean, and for those of you who are speculating on it, I mean, I don't want anyone to lose. I want people to win. But I'm not here promoting you buying pDAI. I'm just saying, I think it's critical for the PulseChain to be truly decentralized for this, this vertically aligned ecosystem vision that Richard has. Conspiracy Crypto, what's up? Drix, good to see you, man. The only one. What's up, man? Good to see you. Okay, so Terrence says these are the current decentralized stable coins in the PulseChain. Slarty. So it has Atom keys if the contract was altered. Yeah, well, the MakerDAO contract. And so how that was altered, you're going to have to drill into it with 9 Irons Capital and Decentralize Me. what was actually happened. I think it's not that it had admin keys. I think what happens is when you hold all of it's like a DAO, right? And so when you have the control, the voting shares in the DAO, so something was altered. The question is, I don't have enough information to know, but I think actually they may have talked to the maker folks, the maker contract folks. And so, is it an admin key or was it an endpoint? Was there something that was broken that they fixed so that would work? So I don't believe that it has quote unquote an admin key. Okay. So in the traditional sense, but I do believe that there was something, and it might've been an endpoint or something so that it would operate on the Pulse chain. Okay. So that's my limited knowledge there. So not in its traditional sense, nor in a way that could invalidate the coins. I think that's the most important point of the, having an admin key. Enoch, what's up? Ruskino, P Diamond Hands, nice, love it. Hex Monkey, good day all, good to see you. Steve Wright, all the way from Santa Barbara, thankful to be listening. Thanks for being here. Like the video, yeah, please do that. Unfortunately, Bitcoin is in the hands of government and Wall Street. Yeah, it's gone in that respect. But I mean, Richard calling it at 241.5, at least that's the last I heard. I mean, that's a long way from here. So I think a lot of people are going to benefit from that. You know what I'm excited about personally is the folks I know who are sitting on a bunch of Ethereum. I think Ethereum is the big opportunity of this next go around here, for the blue chip regular folks right out there. So smash the likes. Yeah, that's right. The CC Tesco. That's awesome. Anders, good to see you. Good evening, all. It's good to hear from a voice of reason. Well, there's a lot of, I mean, this is my shtick, right? There's a lot of folks that are speculating, doing TA, doing all that. And I love it. I watch it myself. But I think you just got to be reminded, man, this is such an exciting time. And I feel like if we don't realize what's at stake and what really is going on and what the implications of this are for like the future of money, we kind of miss it, and we're just out for ourselves. And I think that that's the problem. So as an aside, the things that we're working on, the things that we care about, are about people, right? The quality of people's lives in the world. And the things that, the systems that we have right now are not built for the betterment of people who are struggling. They're meant for those to extract more value. And so the future, I believe, is an abundant one. The more that we align with the abundant nature of creation itself. And, these are the things that I'm thinking about, that our team's thinking about, is that there is a real opportunity here for us within this PulseChain ecosystem to bring a tremendous amount of value. And so the focus that we're focusing on, and that I am, is on the area of real world assets. So real world assets are, things that you can truly point to that you would own that are tokenized within the PulseChain ecosystem. And that becomes liquidity. And so the ability to bring real value and to tokenize that real value and to bring that in as liquidity. One of the challenges that I find with real money, right? Real big money, real professional people who are not degen 25-year-old traders or, people saying one Lambo, but real people that are, managing real money, that are concerned about real things. They basically say two things. They say, what's it backed by? And if I get in, how do I get out? Right. So we know that this challenge, you may be rich in paper gains, right? On paper, you look good, but you can't get much out, right? So this is the issue of obviously going to fiat. You can't pull $1 billion out of your holdings, right? I mean, over time you might be able to, but it's definitely an issue. So when it comes to value, I think a lot of people understand the idea of a rug pull. Well, what's a rug pull? Because in a decentralized exchange, individual people, they provide the liquidity. And so if you provide the liquidity, you have the ability to remove it. And so that removal obviously is a rug pull. You get, left holding the bag. The promise of real world asset tokenization is the fact that you can lock that liquidity. And the confidence for people comes with, right, is there enough liquidity that I would make these kind of bets, that I would come in and invest real money into the Pulse chain and know that I can get it back out when I want? And a lot of the the DeFi world, why it's so small and why it doesn't have a lot of liquidity is because for the most part, it's not locked. And so you're trusting individual people, and you're trusting, that they won't pull that liquidity. And so I think that that's an issue, right? We'll get there. We will get there. But I think that as we in groups within our ecosystem own assets of significant value and tokenize those value and provide locked liquidity, there's a lot of resource, there's a lot of benefit to making the market. But we got to bring more stability when it comes to liquidity itself. It needs to be giving people more confidence to come in and come out and to stay. So that's one piece of it. And then the other is, really backing. And, if you think about it, to back something, let's just think about the old fiat currency that was backed by gold. Silver certificates you could go and get for an ounce of silver. Well, a future where, let's say, you had some sort of gold-backed currency on the PulseChain. Well, theoretically, if it's backed by gold, you could actually redeem it for physical gold. Well, that gives people a lot of confidence. But at the end of the day, you can't eat gold. So, but there's a benefit to that. So I think what we're going to see here with groups like BlackRock and everybody buying up everything and tokenizing everything when it comes to real world assets, we need to be thinking about doing the same thing. How do we bring in significant amounts of liquidity and then lock that liquidity to give people confidence to come in? These are the foundationary things. Of course, I hear people say all the time, "Oh, you just need to buy Hex." Well, yeah, okay. But when you're talking to someone who's bringing in really significant, important money that they don't want to lose, and you want them to come in and bet on your ecosystem, there are certain fundamental things that they're going to require. And I think the more liquidity we can bring in that's locked, and the more confidence that we can show that this is not a short-term play, but a long-term play for the alternative financial system. I don't see where else it would be, unless someone else built it from scratch and had the same, kind of tenets of values as Richard Hart. So, folks, this is an exciting future. And finally, we're out of this like massive bear market and we're into this hopeful time. We'll see what happens after January 20th. We'll see what kind of reforms and changes. We'll see what the new SEC chair is. We'll see if this case from Richard Hart gets dismissed. We'll see if, Richard gives the nod for pDAI. Seems like he has, but, more directly, it would be really nice to have that, or a warning. Hey, do not speculate on pDAI, right? You got it all wrong. I'm not doing what you think I'm doing. But I constantly come back to the fact that there's still $1 billion worth of resource sitting out there, 170,000, 175,000 Ethereum. As that thing pumps, right? As Ethereum breaks its all-time high and continues to go up, the amount of impact on the PulseChain, you want to talk about parabolic runs. When those resources start coming in significantly, they're going to suck in so much value from across the crypto space that it's going to feel like it's almost like a overnight thing that happens. We're really priming for that. Will that happen in the next 2 weeks? Probably not. It's likely that last 5 months of the year is what I would guess. And it's going to take some things like, all right, key points. Ethereum's got to break the all-time high. 2, the case needs to be dismissed for Richard Hart, which I think will happen. He needs to come back and communicate directly with people. That's going to make a big difference. We're not going to have to read between the lines. We're going to hear it from the horse's mouth. And then it's like crazy go time. I think that'll get priced in, but it's not right now. So I think what we're going to have is you have these opportunities to kind of get into things and participate in this market. But I think that I personally think what we're going to see is this Bitcoin run and all the news around this, right? As the strategic reserve gets created and governments start buying Bitcoin, Bitcoin's going to be the news for quite a while. Ethereum's going to catch up. And we're going to see a run in Ethereum, and then we're going to see a massive run in the altcoins. And it'll all gradually move together because it's bonded with Ethereum and others, right? So this whole general thing will move up together, but the real push is going to happen, in my opinion, in the last 5-6 months of the year until we hit the top, which I would say is probably around October or November of 2025. That's my opinion. So the most important thing to note is you don't want to be caught holding the bag. you don't want to be late, and you want to have a strategy of taking profits, because that's the thing that most people don't do, right? They ride it up and then they ride it down. And I think that's the big warning, I would say. I say this a lot recently, is that Richard Hart says he called the top, right? And I always was like, why does he keep bragging about calling the top? Well, I understand now. He's bragging about calling the top because once the top is in, all the money's out. And that's why it drops 85%. So being able to call the top is absolutely amazing and critical, because it tells you you're going to wait another 3-4 years, right? It's a cycle. Now, hopefully that cycle, as we continue, doesn't get as deep. But the point is, when the big money's out, right, the whales are out, it's over. And I don't care if it pops up again. I rode the thing down this last time, and I learned a really important lesson. And I think that if you're new to the crypto world, you just need to take my advice for it. When the top is in, and you're going to wait another 4 years. That's it, period. And so have a strategy. But congratulations, if you're new, you came in at the right time. This is going to be an exciting 2025. So hope you guys, those of you in the States, those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving to you. Thanks for joining the Pulse today. My name is Matt. Like, subscribe, share, all those kind of things. But take care of yourself, and do not mess with Texas. Take care, everybody.